Good morning. Good morning. Hi, welcome everyone
to this very important topic of the day, fake news or false news. I am นัทธาโกมลวาทินสวัสดีค่ะดิฉันนัทธาโกมลวาทินจากไทย PBS
I am Natha Kawanwatin from Thai PBS. I am very honored today to be presenting and being MC a very precious conference and useful one, the International Conference on Fake News 2019. First of all, I would like to thank all of the 8 organizations, namely Thai Media Fund, the National Press Council of Thailand, the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, Thai Health Promotion Foundation, the Thai Public Broadcasting Service, Thai PBS, Faculty of Communication Arts, Chulalongkorn University, Faculty of Journalism and Mass Communication, Thammasat University, and the Online News Provider Association.
Go moderator a bit. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I'd like to welcome all of you to International Conference on Fake News 2019. First of all, I'd like to thank 8 organizations who share the same sentiment of having high concern of fake news. And the 8 organizations in Thailand are Thai Media Fund, the National Press Council of Thailand, Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, Thai Health Promotion Foundation, Thai Public Broadcasting Service, Thai PBS, Faculty of Communication Arts, Chulalongkorn University, Faculty of Journalism and Mass Communication, Thammasat University, and Online News Providers Association, SONP. All 8 organizations in Thailand have shared sentiment and share same concern of the widespread of disinformation, information, manipulation of information. That's the origin of International Conference on Fake News today. And เพราะว่าในยุคปัจจุบันในยุคดิจิทัล
Because in the digital society, everyone becomes a media, and therefore they can become a part of spreading the news. Maybe it's very hard to check the facts, and in order to report according to our profession, there's a question: what is going to govern this spread of news to ensure the accuracy, the fact that can be spread to the public in the times when we see a lot of fake news disseminated throughout the public. So this is our objective today, to build immunity and to ensure awareness that people are aware of fake news.
To seek guidelines for journalists in terms of to have more awareness in terms of disinformation, misinformation, and manipulation of information, and what the media should do. The conference will consist of panel discussion on countering fake news, best practice, and policy implication. In the afternoon, there are 3 groups of workshop, and the topic are as follows. Group 1, public policy in handling disinformation in digital era. Group 2, lesson learned on fact-checking efforts, opportunities and challenges. Group 3, media information and digital literacy, MIDL, empowering digital citizenship. ก่อนอื่นในช่วงเช้านะคะก็จะเป็นการปราศัยก่อนการกล่าวสุนทรพจน์
Morning, there will be the speakers about finding facts in a world of disinformation, the search for collective solution, as well as a panel discussion on countering fake news, best practices, and policy implication. And in the afternoon, there will be 3 workshops. So, first of all, I would like to invite the CEO of Thai Media Fund, Kun Wasan Paileeklee, to welcome you all.
The Chief Executive Officer, the Media Fund, TMF, คุณวสันต์ Paileeklee, for opening remarks.
Audrey, Tang, Taiwan's Digital Minister, honorable panelists, our partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Thai Media Fund as a co-host of International Conference on Fake News, it is a great pleasure to welcome our eminent speaker, panelists, and all of you to this special event. ครับ ขอต้อนรับท่านผู้แทนภาคีเครือข่าย
May I welcome all of the partners of all the 8 organizations who are here, the speakers and representatives from foreign countries. Fake news certainly is something that can create a lot of damage, widespread damage all over the country. So both in Thailand and in foreign countries, the situation currently is now aggravating. Last week, the 8 parties have formed by the Thai Media Fund, the the Communication Arts, Chulalongkorn University, Faculty of Journalism and Mass Communication, Thammasat University, National Press Council of Thailand, the Friedrich Naumann Foundation of Freedom, the Thai Health Promotion Foundation, the Online News Provider Association, SONP, and the Thai Public Broadcasting Service, or Thai PBS, have joined hands in signing the Declaration of Combined Power Against Fake News. That is the public declaration to fight against fake news. The International Conference on Fake News today have been honored by representatives of academia and several organizations, both domestically and foreign. The Digital Minister from Taiwan, academicians from University of Hong Kong, the Free Democrat Party from Germany, Mr. Mario Brandenburg, as well as Thomson Reuters News, who are now joining us to present ideas and informations on fake news and best practices against them. The Thai Media Fund hopes that the International Conference on Fake News today will be able to be commencing a start to counter the fake news effectively. All of the press and the media, especially the modern social media, will have more awareness of checking the facts and fake news. I would like to thank all of both Thai and foreign organizations who have joined hands to drive this declaration against combined power against fake news for the public to understand and be able to use the social media intelligently. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kun Wasan Paileeklee, for the opening address of International Conference. You can see the power of the combined 8 organizations to work together. And next, I would like representatives of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, charity organization to promote human rights and human responsibility. So,
Katrin Bannach from Friedrich Naumann Foundation.
Honorable Minister Tang, Kun Wasan, esteemed guests, I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation today here. I'd like to thank the panelists for coming all the way to Bangkok today for the conference, and the participants for being here with us and for our discussions later on. Let me briefly explain why the Friedrich Naumann Foundation is supporting this conference, why we find it important. The Friedrich Naumann Foundation, FNF, was founded 60 years ago in Germany and we are there to promote democracy around the world by offering civic education. That is no historic coincidence. Based on our experiences with the horrors of the Nazi regime, the German political institutions tried to reinvent themselves completely after the Second World War. And the goal was never again. We never wanted such a dictatorship to happen again. And the answer was, how to do this, was the establishment of a liberal democracy. But not only, we also realized that institutions are not enough. You need democratic citizens, you need people who believe in democracy, who participate in it, and who also ask critical questions to the government, hold the government accountable, in order not to fall for the propaganda of a dictatorship. And this is still the Friedrich Naumann Foundation's role today in Germany, to encourage Germans to become watchful and engaged citizens. What does this bring us to Thailand and around the world, you might wonder? Well, democracy is challenged nowadays even more again around the world. And in many countries, these challenges also are similar, but of course are also different. I just refer to our history. Of course, in every country, the questions are different. So we think that's important to exchange experience around the world. And the Friedrich Naumann Foundation offers a platform for international exchange, for international dialogue. And this is exactly what this conference today is meant to be. I mentioned the connection between the Friedrich Naumann Foundation's mandate and our history, and the German history, actually because it has a lot to do with today's conference. This information was not invented in the social media age. It was used in many countries before for many centuries to pursue political goals, often undemocratic and even violent ones. And if you look back at the Nazi regime, they were masters of this information. We had a very powerful ministry for public engagement and propaganda, and it was a very powerful tool to support the masses, support to the Nazi regime. And at that time, it was a very totalitarian approach. The Nazis centralized all control, all aspects of German culture and intellectual life. Now, this was at a time where that was possible in Germany. However, the same intention are there sometimes still today. And maybe such propaganda is not done in such an obvious way, but sometimes done still in a more subtle way. It's still a challenge. Even now that disinformation is nothing new, social media adds a new component to it. There are great advantages of the digitization. It offers us opportunities for more transparency, for more accountability, and for democratization. The great thing is that everyone can access information and everyone can publish information. However, the challenge is exactly the same. Everyone can access information, everyone can publish information. That's also a challenge to democracy, because democracy needs to be based on fact. It needs a democratic discussion based on fact. And because these are challenges which are fairly new to a lot of countries around the world, it's good to come together and discuss them here, because we haven't really found many solutions to them. We realized that we're at the stage where we're all looking for instruments how to tackle them. And I'm sure by today, by coming together and hosting this conference, we will find out more ideas and possibly more solutions. I wish us all a fruitful discussion, interesting afternoon and morning session. Sawasdee ka.
Thank you very much, Ms. Katrin Bannach from Friedrich Naumann Foundation. And next, let me introduce you first, Your Excellency Audrey Tang, who will deliver keynote speech this morning on finding fact in a world of disinformation, the search for collective solutions. She will give us the information from the very beginning, her idea, her arguments. As perhaps some of you have already Googled her biography. She's been the digital minister on October the 1st and was placed in charge of helping government agency communication policy goals. She was part of hackers, activists of Sunflower movement in Taiwan in 2014 before joining the government as the digital minister. She's been rated as one of the great personality in technology in Taiwan. So right now, please let me welcome Your Excellency Audrey Tang. And sorry ก่อนที่คุณออเดย์จะเริ่มพูดนะคะ
Before
ขอ
Kun Audrey,
อ
the
ธิบาย
Minister
วิ
of
ธีการ
Digital
ส่ง
will
คำถาม
talk
เพราะว่า
about.
คุณออเดย์อยา
I
ก
would
จะ
say
ให้
that the way
ได้
to
มี
ask
ส่วน
the
ร่วม
questions
กันอย่างมาก
because I would like you to
ในการตั้ง
participate
คำถามแสดง
in
ความคิดเห็น
raising
เกี่ยว
questions
กับ
and
ออนไล
express
น์
your
ของแต่ละ
opinions
ท่านเลยนะคะ
about the online.
ใช้แอปพลิเคชัน
So
นะคะ
you can use the
รบกวนทีมงานขึ้น
application.
QR code นะคะ
Could you
QR code
please
ที่เห็น
set
อยู่
up
นี่
the
นะคะ
QR code on the
กด
screen?
แอปพลิเคชัน Line เปิดแอปพลิเคชัน
Put
Line
the
ของท่านขึ้น
application
มากดปุ่ม
line,
เพิ่มเพื่อน
okay.
หรือ add friend
Okay,
แล้วก
add
ดโอ
friends
เค
and
จากนั้น
press
ก็เข้าสู่หน้า
OK.
Ask Audrey
And then you
แล้ว
will
สา
get
มารถ
to
ส่ง
ask
คำถามให้คุณ
Audrey.
ออเดย์ได้
And
เล
then
ย
you can send
ต
the
ลอดเวลา
question to
ที่
Audrey
คุณ
all
ออ
the
เดย์
time
นะคะเพื่อที่จะ
during
ได้
the
เห็นคำถาม
presentation
เดียว
of Kun
ถามเลย
Audrey
ค่ะ
so
The floor is
she
yours, Audrey.
can see the questions and she can answer right away.
So, good morning, everyone. I'm really honored to be here to share with you some thoughts for 40 minutes about how to work against disinformation. But first, because I want to explain my role, so the moderator introduced me as joining the government, but I joined the Taiwanese government to work with the government, not for the government. So I'm still firmly a hacktivist and part of civil society. I have to say this first. And the next thing that I want to say is that this talk will be crowdsourced, meaning that you're asked, if you can, to scan the QR code. Please switch to the QR code a little bit. So this is my talk, but can the people in the AV department switch back to the Slido so that the people in the live stream can see it? So the talk will be structured in two parts. The first part is the talk, which will go about 20 minutes. But the second part is a Q&A session. And we'd like to invite everybody watching the live stream to also join me in the Q&A session. Some of you may have already scanned the QR code, but if you haven't, you can go to slido.com. That's SLIDO.com. And slido.com and enter the numbers 00617. So 00 and 617, that's today's date, at slido.com. So whether if you scan the QR code or whether if you are online, you can enter the questions and vote on each other's questions. Exactly like this. And as people have asked me questions, I will highlight them. And the highlighted questions will become the topic of discussion. And after answering one question, I will just archive it and take it down, and so that we can keep interacting this way. But people raising your hand on this room, of course, have precedence, have priority over the online questions. So feel free to start asking questions now during my talk, and just use the Slido platform to like each other's questions. Okay, so that was like the 2-minute beginning. Let's switch back to my slides, please. Can I have my PowerPoint? So go back to the PowerPoint. Yeah. All right. So my talk today is about finding facts in a world of disinformation, the search of collective solutions, and the emphasis on the collective. In open societies, everybody across different sectors have different roles to play. The government providing a safe and secure communication environment, the journalists providing investigations into what the facts are, and the civil society working on different issues, focusing on solving the issues in a way, given different positions to find out common values. But disinformation crisis is a global threat to open societies exactly because it makes it very difficult for people to tell what facts are and participate in the collective fact-finding process. And in Taiwan, we don't say fake news because in the Mandarin that we speak, journalist 新闻工作 or 新闻工作者 is literally news worker. So news work, 新闻工作, right? So we have the same word for news and journalism, essentially. So when we say fake news in Taiwan, it feels like, accusing the journalist of producing bad journalism. It's very different from, of course, things that pretends to be journalism, but really isn't, and misleading titles and all that. So when we say 假新闻 or fake news in Mandarin, it's very unclear what is meant, and it feels like an assault on journalism. And because of my mother and father were all journalists, and because of filial piety, I have to pay respect to them. So I don't say 假新闻. So in Taiwan, we say 假讯息 or disinformation. And disinformation in Taiwan, we have a legal definition for disinformation. It's not just a communication word. There's a legal definition. And it's called intentional, harmful untruth. And the harmful here is qualified to say basically harming the public, harming the public's ability to discover facts together, harming the democracy. It's not just harming the image of a minister. That's just good journalism, right? So it has to harm the public, and it has to be intentional. It has to be untrue, and that is the basis of our legal definition of disinformation. Now, when we're tackling disinformation, we need to be very clear that Taiwan's core values are freedom of expression and the openness of society. According to the Human Rights Watch organization Civicus Monitor, Taiwan is the only totally open jurisdiction in this part of the world, actually all the way to Africa. And that is because whenever we see things like the disinformation crisis, we see it as an invitation for the sectors to work closer together instead of driving us apart. If we drive us apart, then there's a strong attraction for the government to infringe the freedom of expression, using that as excuse, as we have seen in some jurisdictions. But in Taiwan, we always use it as an invitation to make the society even more free and open. Now, I would like to explain our three methodologies to counter disinformation. And the first one is called timely response. On average, across all the ministries in Taiwan, whenever we detect a raising misinformation, it may not be intentional, it could be just a rumor. But if it's a rumor, it's not clarified within an hour, within the same news cycle, then the people who are intentional just manufacture disinformation out of it. So this 1 hour window is very, very important. When we see a raising rumor or misinformation, all the ministries are now equipped with dedicated teams to contribute our understanding of the context to the popular media in a way that is attractive, that is fun within 1 hour, so that people can tell the differences between the government message that has the full context versus a gossip which often lacks full context. But we're not taking anything down, right? We were just sharing our view of the world in a very timely fashion. So just use one example. And this is a funny one because this is our premier, our prime minister. So two photos of him. The larger one is when he was young, and the smaller one is he is now. So he is now bald, but he has more hair in his youth, right? So basically, the top says there's a popular rumor now. And the rumor is quoted saying, perming your hair will be subject to a fine of 1 million NT dollars starting next week, which is ridiculous, right? But we detect that it's been spreading. And so it says not true. And then the quote of a younger prime minister said, I may be bald now, but I will not punish people with hair. So it's very funny. And there's a smaller sentence that says, what we have actually done is that by 2021, we're requiring the people who make perming and dyeing products to start labeling the ingredients in their hair products. That's all the government's policy. And it's very easy to communicate in just one sentence. But if you start with that sentence, nobody wants to read it, right? So you have to frame it in a way that's funny, right? And I didn't translate that to English, but the last part, the bald prime minister, what he's saying, the premier is saying here is that, but if you keep perming your hair many times in a week, your hair will fall off and become like me. So, So it's a humorous at the expense of himself, and it reached many people, right? Many people really just organically share these pictures just by the Facebook and Twitter and Lines accounts alone. It reached to a massive amount of people, so that people become kind of inoculated. They still see the rumor afterwards, but their mind is already inoculated against the very existence of such a rumor. And we discovered that if we push this out within 1 hour, then it reached a balance. But if we only push it after 24 hours, then it's impossible. The rumor will already have reached everybody. So time is of the utmost importance here. The next thing, the second of the three prong of countering disinformation is collaborative checking. So in Taiwan, the civil society, the social sector, there's a civic tech movement called GovZero or G0V. Basically, the social sector looks at all the government service that they find missing or bad or badly delivered. And because all the government services end in gov.tw, so people in the social sector just register the same website, but with something that g0v.tw. So if you change the O to a 0, you get into the shadow government that is done by the social sector. And so that is how people fork, meaning that taking the government to a different direction, but it's always open source and free of copyright or patent restrictions. And so the people in the GovZero community developed this co-fact collaborative checkings like a Wikipedia, where everybody can contribute that collectively identify the popular rumors, and they work with the international fact-checking network through the Taiwan Fact-Checking Center. And so this is a popular line bot. At the moment, I think 100,000 people have added a bot called Kofax as a friend online. So the way it works is that oftentimes the disinformation works by provoking outrage, right? You see a picture, you think that you have to forward it out, right? So it basically says, if you feel the urge of forwarding a rumor or misinformation, you can forward to the robot. The robot will not get upset, but the robot will rather go back to you and say whether this is actually clarified or not, whether this information or not. And all the clarification message is crowdsourced, meaning that people actually meet every week and talk in a way that is very friendly among the fact checkers, and anyone is welcome to join. There's food, there's excellent drinks and things like that. So it makes disinformation a interesting topic, just like people talk about their favorite Pokemon, right? They may talk about their favorite disinformation campaign of the month and contribute into clarifying it on a shared database. And this then connects to the Taiwan Fact Check Center, which is part of the International Fact Checking Network, that looks at the most popular flagged rumors on the COFAC network and then do a thorough investigative reporting style clarification report on it. And that is our second line of defense that is from the social sector. And so Line, the company, of course, took notice into this and actually supported a lot the social sector's work of essentially just like you can flag an email as spam, you can now very easily flag an incoming Line message as potential misinformation or disinformation. So that's our second line of defense. Our third line of defense then is election and referendum law, because the payoff is especially strong during the election season, right? So we see that there's a lot of people who want to influence through precision targeting on social media, through all the sort of political advertisement. And because Taiwan has one of the most transparent campaign donation law anywhere in the world, we publish using machine-readable format, like a database or Excel spreadsheets, each and every campaign donation to a election campaign. So in a previous election, we have witnessed that people who maybe have, influences on election using money, they prefer to go through advertisements rather than campaign donation because this is too transparent for them. But now we're not actually refraining from just saying, starting next election, advertisements are going to be treated as campaign donations. All the advertisers are then required to disclose the funding source of their, regardless of whether they're institutional media, social media, paper media, or whatever, disclose the source of the funding. And it's like anti-money laundering. Every part have to reveal their true funding that sponsors them. And if any of them tracks to a external jurisdiction, then it's actually, of course, election interference then. And so this is our third line of defense, and it takes effect only during election and making it a crime if there's a foreign-sponsored propaganda to do so. And so again, we rely on independent media. There's many independent media in Taiwan that just looks at the campaign donation records and very soon the political advertisement records and do a thorough media charting relationship, finding all the different connections and so on. And it's the greatest thing about those independent media is that they all work collaboratively on GitHub, which is a website the open source developers use, now sponsored by Microsoft. But in any case, what GitHub is doing is that it makes sure that the methodology, the tools that you make to make those analysis is by itself can be verified. If somebody makes a mistake in making the charts or things like that, everybody in the social sector can come in and look at it and find out what is actually the best way to present in a fair fashion the political contributions, whether it's campaign donation or advertisement. So again, independent journalism that talks collectively to the social sector is of utmost importance. Now I talked about 3 defense. Now I want to talk about 3 proactive actions that we are also doing. So one of the proactive action is actually just open government. I'm a minister that across all the different ministries, and I can talk about any ministry's issues as long as 5,000 people petition online to talk about it. So we actually travel to you if you can get 5,000 signatures online. And we have a team in each ministry to talk to people who petition even for cross-ministerial matters. And I personally, this is my office, by the way, I personally, in the office, in the Social Innovation Lab in Taipei City, provide office hours. So every Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., anyone can come and talk to me for 40 minutes. I'm very easily reachable on Twitter and so on. And so anyone can really have a real conversation and ask what are things going. And what I have found that it is much easier if we explain the why of policy making, the context of policy making, instead of just policies. And so every meetings I chair, even internally, I publish the entire transcript after 2 weeks of co-editing of all the meeting participants. And so everybody can go to the website. The address is archive, A-R-C-H-I-V-E, archive.tw, and see that since I become the digital minister, I have talked to 4,000 people on about 200,000 speeches, and everything is transcribed just like the legislative and the judicial branches. And the great thing about that is that then people don't have to explain the same thing twice. Everybody can see the context of policy making that reduces the rumors, and the budget and everything is also open for everybody to have a conversation about. Now, the second line of proactive action is that we work with the popular messaging companies. Line, I think, is also pretty popular here, and they just announced that they're part of the digital accountability best practice. So that starting next month, I believe, they will take the CoFact bot and the Taiwan fact-checking bot and 2 other bots, the 4 social sector clarifications, and build it into its own product so that everybody can just very easily long tap or signal a message and send a message into the fact checkers. And so you don't have to manually add CoFact as your friends. Line will facilitate that by having a function in itself. And Line also, many of you maybe know, that has a separate section called Line Today, right? It's like its own small media. And in Line Today, there will be a special column just for popular clarifications. And so people can go to Line Today and see what the trending clarification is. Basically making clarification a fun media message that people can just proactively check before they see the disinformation on their end-to-end encryption. And the great thing about this is that the state doesn't have to read your end-to-end encrypted message because it's technologically not good to do so, right? It's just rumors, right? But when people start suspecting that there's a disinformation campaign going on, they can just flag it directly on online messaging and for the clarifications from the independent fact checkers to appear online today. And so that is our second active contribution. So this is our president, Dr. Tsai Ing-wen, talking to the line bearer. So I have 2 more minutes and then we go to questions. So I think the third thing is that we also use public funding to film a series of very impactful and highly acclaimed, I think it's 95% on IMDb and even higher domestically, a TV series. And a TV series called The World Between Us talks about how the media framing works, talks about how people in the media and doing journalism is caught between the need of real-time reporting and the racing against the tabloids and gossiping and things like that, difficulty of doing proper investigative journalism, the usual framing of social issues into controversies and things like that. And it's really, really well made. It's supported by public money in the public television, and it's very popular. And after that, the discussion around media literacy become much easier. And so much so that starting this August, we're making into our K-12 curriculum. So starting from the first grade, from the primary school, the students will learn about critical thinking and media literacy, not as a class, not as 2 hours every week, but across all the different classes. We have handouts to all the different teachers, whether you're teaching geography, mathematics, or sociology, or whatever. You can work with the kids on how to discover independent information online, and also on doing the media literacy, referencing the public television into the idea of a collective understanding. So this is the film, The World Between Us. It's 10 TV series. It's really good with 10 episodes. So I hope that someday it gets translated here. And so just to recap very quickly, basically you will understand that I see the disinformation through an epidemic metaphor. And I personally have worked back 20 years ago in working to counter spam and junk email. So I see it in a very similar situation. The spam and junk mail was solved not only by government regulation or infringing on free speech, but rather by everybody like Gmail and Outlook, Hotmail, everybody agreeing to add a flag as spam button so that people can donate voluntarily junk mails to a spam house, to the domain blocking list, to all the different social sector endeavors, so that we collectively understand the pattern of junk mail and do academic research on it so that we have facts about the disinformation. And this is the same direction that Taiwan is going. And the public media, the social sector, everybody has a role to play in it. So that's my 20 minutes of contribution. And let's switch to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Audrey Tang. Can you please join me in the middle of the stage? Or you like to take a look on smartphone at the same time? Thank you very much, Minister, for your enlightening us with what you have done. Can you just move to the middle of the stage?
Yeah, and we have the people's voice.
Yes, yes. So what would you like me to do to ask you a question and integrate with the questions asking you?
Whatever you would like to do.
Okay, so let me flag up some questions.
Okay.
Yeah. You told us about your channeling of conversation, talking with people, and you try to pave the way to encourage government, Taiwanese government, to have more conversation with citizens. How is it going, and what's the most asked question in Ask Audrey session?
Right, that's a great question. So I think the government is now having a lot more confidence. Right, it used to be when we helped occupying the parliament in 2014 that people were very afraid of talking to 5,000 citizens. They fear that it will escalate and they will get misquoted, that they will get a lot of burden just by talking to citizens. But now, because the government itself has a system of, as I said, a radically transparent system of capturing the context of conversation, there is less fear about quoting out of context. There's less uncertainty because people have already voted on each other's questions, just like Slido. People are voting on each other's questions so that we only tackle the one with the most consensus already among people. So it makes sure that we don't waste our time answering a question that maybe only one person has, but rather focusing our energy on things that everybody cares about. And one of the most asked questions in our e-petition platform is about human rights. It's about how Taiwan can protect more the human rights, like the referendum law that we just had a referendum, a real referendum. People have a e-petition that says, oh, you shouldn't have a referendum that impinge on the minorities' rights. And when we find a petitioner, he is just 16 years old. Or environment is also very popular. A couple years ago, we have a very popular petition that says you should ban plastic straws in the takeout drinks and things like that. And it's reached 5,000 people very quickly. And then when we meet with the petitioner, she's again just 15 years old. And
Very young
and caring about the plastic waste and things like that. And so I think the social justice and environment are the two most popular things.
Yes. And does it turn out that you also encourage other ministers in the parliament to be joining in the conversation and to respond to the questions from people directly?
Yeah, very much so. I think that is why we have participation officers. So those are a team of people in each ministry in charge of talking to their ministers and figuring out a way to talk directly with people in a way that responds to people's e-petitions and people's ideas and things like that. And it's working really well. We have many ministries voluntarily sending people to my office to learn this art from me. It's not everybody, right? In Taiwan, we have 32 ministries. At the moment, I have 22 colleagues, so not everybody. Like the Ministry of Defense have not sent anyone yet. But the ministry that want to talk publicly and openly, like culture, education, interior, communication, justice, finance, and so on, they all have sent people to my office.
Yes. And would you say that this is leading to open government of Taiwanese government of what you have been doing?
Yeah, I think so. I think open government is not just about the government being open about, getting ideas from the citizen, but fundamentally it's about trusting the people. If I trust the people, if people generally feel the government trusts them on getting their input, then they can trust back, right? So the government has to trust the people first. That is the idea of open government in Taiwan.
Yes. And one line of your speech, you said that perhaps the government is so afraid that open society is become threat to the government. So how does that sentiment been reduced after you've been doing this quite a while?
That's right. So I think if anyone here works in public service, so all my parents and grandparents actually work in public service, so I know something about how public servants think. So it's roughly speaking three things, right? The people in public service think about efficiency, how to make it more efficient to deliver service to the people. People think about reducing risk of how to make sure that their ministers don't get attacked from the population by some mistake in their policy. And finally, they also care about credit and personal honor, right? About doing the work greatly and getting recognized as great public servants. And before radical transparency, it's actually very difficult for the public service to truly innovate, because if things go right, the minister can take all the credit. And if things go wrong, the minister can always blame the public service, right? So it's not in a very good position. But after radical transparency and direct conversation, if things go right, everybody recognize, the journalists recognize the person who came up with the innovation and solution because it's part of the record. And if things go wrong, you can always blame Audrey. And so in this way, people are actually encouraged to innovate.
So open and transparency also encouraged to have more trust in the government.
Radical trust, that's right.
Yes. So let's now integrate with the live questions.
Okay.
The first one.
Okay.
What's your view on fighting fake news in our Asia style and the Western style? What's a difference?
Okay, that's a great question. I think journalism in Asia and journalism in the Western world don't have any fundamental differences. It's about collective discovery of facts. However, in Asia, when we talk, for example, in Mandarin about 共识, about consensus, it is actually of a different nature, and that is, I think, the main difference. 共识 in Mandarin means roughly common understanding. So this is not something that is so strong, like a consensus you can sign your name on, but just something that is kind of, we agree to disagree, but there's something we can all live with. There's a general, less violent debate. So we talk about deliberate, we don't talk about debate, and we talk about finding our rough consensus, not very fine consensus, and so on. So we have a softer approach to consensus, and I think that helps, for example, the COFACTS team, because in the COFACTS social sector, of course, there are people of different political inclinations, different fields, different expertise, and so on. If they're seeking a very fine consensus, basically online, the people with the most time wins, right? You can just keep trolling, right? But because what we're seeking is just a common understanding, so there's more tolerance in the common understanding of rough consensus, and I think that then helps the journalist to add their own perspective into it. So this idea of a more, rough idea of consensus, a more tolerant way of consensus making, I think is really good in Asia to get collective action going.
Can we have more questions, please?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So what do you like to deal with? How do you deal with media that spread fake news?
Mm-hmm. Right. So everybody is media now, right? If you have a mobile phone, you are the media, right? So as I think it was McLuhan, right, that said, don't hate the media, be the media. so if we see media like social media or popular YouTubers or so on spreading information that is mistaken, we call out them on it, of course. I think the idea is not, we don't go to takedown. In Taiwan, takedown is something that is seen as a judicial branch thing. If there is really an infringement of copyright or whatever, there may be at the end result in a takedown after filing lawsuits and so on, but it's seen as a judicial thing. And we're in the administration, so we're not doing takedowns. What we're doing is what we call notice and public notice. So when people notice us that there's a disinformation going, you can see our premier, doing very funny pictures to call them out on it, or our president going on stand-up comedy, or our deputy premier going on a popular live streaming playing a video game, or things like that. So basically, we become media. We're not taking anything down from the administrative branch, but we deal with media by having our own social media and self-media going on in the government itself.
But information is very powerful, Minister Audrey. And the government must have known that they hold power in terms of spreading information. Have you found the case of state produce or sponsor disinformation campaigns to benefit the government?
Right, so I think especially during elections, there's always a problem, right? Because when, for example, our president now running for her second term, right? The separation between the judicial branch, which always have to be entirely impartial, and the administration, which of course need to explain what the president really has done in the past 4 years. This line need to be very clearly marked. And so if the government actually have any information in Taiwan's any institutional or social media that is directly or indirectly paid by the government, we have a law that says it has to say government advertisement on it, so that people understand that this information comes from a government funding source. So when we say in election, we have to ask everybody to declare their funding source in political propaganda and so on, we're not holding a double standard. We hold ourselves to that standard, and now we're asking everybody else to the same standard.
It means you really need strong and objective judicial system,
yes,
the whole institution.
Very much so, very much so.
Yeah. Also,
a question.
What's next?
Yes.
How to raise public seriousness about disinformation disorder?
Okay, so because I said people who raise hand have priority, I have to be accountable to my words. So. You can have my microphone. Oh, okay.
How's that?
That's good. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to be undemocratic and grab it from the floor. But no, one thing I want to ask you about is I've read extensively that Taiwan is a major target of disinformation from mainland China.
And also hard cyber attacks.
Yeah.
It's not a secret.
Yeah. So how would you quantify the disinformation threat from the mainland? And how can you deal with it? And how do you see it developing in the run-up to the next election? Thank you.
Okay, great question. So the reason why, of course, we have to pass the Political Campaign Advertisement Act is, of course, even Facebook itself has disclosed that they receive massive amount of funding from the PRC government on those period of time, right? So it's not a secret. Everybody can analyze the money that they spent during that election period. And so I think the disclosure of honest advertisement is the direct response to that. We're, of course, also facing hard cyber attacks. It's not just disinformation, which is more on the content level and can be dealt with actually relatively easily by the social sector. Hard cyber attacks is much harder to counter by the social sector alone. We really have to have a really good idea of where the cyber attacks comes from and a good relationship with white hat hackers. And so white hat hackers, which is a terminology that's like a jargon, it's people who can break into a system, but they tell you about it. Black hat hackers is people who break into a system, but they don't tell you about it. And so the white hat people are the most treasured information workers in Taiwan. The president herself said that cybersecurity is national security, and we guarantee for all new government projects 5% to 7% of budget just for penetration testing and white hat hacker empowerment. And so if you're a white hat hacker in Taiwan, you get paid really well. You get to meet with the president or digital minister quite frequently, and so that you don't fall to the dark side, which has cookies. And so a good relationship with white hat hackers is our answer of being literally on the front line of cyber attacks. And that applies to a degree also to disinformation, but we emphasize more the social sector's role because the requirement of training is less than hard cybersecurity, but it's very similar.
I think the second question is quite crucial.
Yes.
How you encourage public to participate in crowdsourced fact-checking?
Yes. So the key to get people participating in any activity like that are three. First, that it has to be easily actionable. Actionable meaning that you can only spend a couple seconds on upvoting or downvoting something. You can maybe spend just 5 seconds to flag something as disinformation. So making it really easy for people to participate and instant gratification, that is very important. Second is about connected. So when people do this fact checking, they don't do this alone. As I mentioned, the weekly meetups, the meetings with good food and drink and venue and things like that, making it a popular hobby of people to participate, that is also important, the environment. And the third thing is to make it extensible. Extensible means that people in social sector, when they do co-facts and things like that, everything is open source. So everybody can build another system that builds off on it. For example, there's another bot on the line system called the 美玉 aunt, 美玉姨. 美玉 is another bot that you can invite to your chat rooms on the line system, and they see every message that everybody sent, but they forget about it. So there's no log, there's no analytic. It's all open source. You can check or set up yourself. But they compare every incoming message with a clarified rumor on the COFAC database. And if it's already clarified, they just add saying, oh, it's clarified, it's not like that, and things like that. And so 美玉 is really popular because then you can correct the mistakes that your friends or families made without hurting their face, right? If you correct them by yourself, they will hate you. But now it's just a bot correcting them, so it's better, I think. And so just more creative ways to make things extensible in addition of being actionable and connected. These are the three keys of public engagement.
I got the signal. I'm so sorry. I got the signal that our time is
Yeah,
up. But
yeah,
I
we're
just
at
have
time. Yeah.
two personal, not quite personal.
Okay.
The one is
Semi-personal.
big technology company like Facebook,
Yes.
Google, Twitter. They are part of spreading disinformation. What should be mechanism by the government or citizens in general to have checks and balances on them?
Right. So actually, the German NetzDG really helped us, right? Because we talked to them, and because all my meetings are publicly transcribed, so you can actually find my talks with people from Google and Line and Facebook on this particular matter. And basically, what we were saying is that we think notice and public notice, we think a code of conduct is a better way, a multi-stakeholder way. But please implement it correctly. Otherwise, we may be forced to do something like an SDG that force those social media companies to do the takedown and censorship by themselves. So don't force us to force you to force others on takedown, right? Because then they will incur a large amount of cost in just implementing the system. And so I think they see it as kind of a better alternative to participate in this best practice of digital accountability.
Just a bit semi-personal.
Okay.
Do you enjoy being hacker or being minister? Which one is?
I'm both.
Did you
I'm both.
Still?
I'm both. I'm still contributing on GitHub, right? If you go to my GitHub account, I'm still coding, right? I'm still maintaining the civic hacking projects. So as I said, I'm working as a channel between the movements on one hand and the governments on the other hand. So I'm kind of at a middle, at a Lagrange point between the two to make sure that people can culturally translate each other's ideas and voices in a way that fosters common understanding and common values.
And we all know that Taiwan is the first country in Asia to have same-sex
to have marriage equality, yes.
And you are transgender
yes, of course.
minister.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you find having open source has also helped in terms of advocate people to really support any big cause or any big issue like to support same-sex marriage?
Yes, I think so. Having an open debate, a good petition system, a system where everybody can see everybody's arguments, eventually led us to legalize marriage equality in a way that is very unique in the world. What we have legalized is that we have legalized the bylaws, that is to say the rights and duties and all the benefits of marriage, of performing marriage and being wed, but not of the in-laws. So basically in Mandarin, we have 16 different words for aunt and uncle and things like that. And there's a specific chapter in the civil code that talks about the related parts of the in-laws. And these become kind of confusing to people who are more conservative when after marriage equality gets passed. So we have a hyperlink act that says we enjoy, all the marriage equality couples enjoy exactly the same status as heterosexual couples for the bylaws, but we don't touch anything about the in-laws. And I think that is the kind of rough consensus common understanding that across generations people can accept. And we're very happy to export it, for example, to Japan or to other jurisdictions which share very similar civil code.
One last final question.
Okay.
Is your IQ 118?
No, that's actually that's misinformation. My height is 180 centimeters. and for adults IQ, the test stops at 160. So I don't know what my IQ is, but I know that nowadays if you have some apps on your phone and you're allowed to bring the phone to IQ test, everybody is 160. So adult IQ is not important anymore. What's important is how we reach common understanding and common values.
You are being modest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Digital Minister Audrey Tang. Right now, I'd like to invite Kun Wasan Paileeklee on the stage to give present to Kun Audrey. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Digital Minister Audrey Tang. และโอกาสนี้นะคะขอเรียนเชิญผู้แทนจาก 8 องค์กร
On this occasion, I would like to invite all 8 organizations and representatives on the stage. Kun Wasan, can you please remain on stage? Ms. Katrin Bannach, the head of Thailand, Myanmar office, FNF, Dr. Paileeklee Saoruam, the director of the Thai Media of the Thai Health Promotion Foundation, Dr. Vilasani, the director of Thai PBS, Kun Supinya Klangnarong, representative from National Press Council of Thailand, Professor Friedrich Kajimoto from the Faculty of Communications, Arts, Chulalongkorn University, Professor Achara Jantrawong, the Dean of Faculty of Journalism and Mass Communication, Thammasat University.
คุณก้าวโรจน์สุตา
คุณก้าวโรจน์สุตาภักดี
ผู้ผลิตข่าวออนไลน์
the head of
Mr.
Society
Masato
of Online
Kajimoto,
News Provider,
Journalism and Media
Mr.
Studies Center, the University of
Kajimoto
Hong Kong.
Masato, Journalism and Media Study Center, University of
Nur-Azna
Hong Kong.
Sanusi
Nur-Azna
from Thomson
Sanusi
Reuters.
from Thomson Reuters.
Mr. Eric Wishart,
Mr. Eric Wishart,
Agency France Presse,
Agence
AFP.
France, Presse, AFP.
Lucille S.
Lucille S.
Sodipe,
Sodipe,
Vera
Viraphiles from the Philippines.
Mario Brandenburg
And
from
Mr.
German
Mario
Bundestag
Brandenburg from German Bundestag.
และผู้อำนวยการสุดารัตน์
And the director สุดารัตน์ พงษ์อำพรไกรวัน
ผู้อำนวยการกระทรวงวัฒนธรรม
from the Ministry of
เชิญถ่าย
Culture.
ภาพร่วมกันค่ะ
On the stage, please, for a group photo.
เชิญให้แขกรับเชิญถือป้าย fake news ได้เลย
Please, can you give the
Sing
fake
bye,
news?
Naka.
There are 4 fake news tiny ads.
.ยิ้มสดใสนะคะ กดไลค์ได้นะคะ เชิญค่ะ
You can press like on the Facebook
Oh,
or
see,
on
ข่าวลวงข่าวหลอก
there on the fake news alert and conference on fake news.
Thank you very much everyone on the stage ขอบพระคุณทุกท่านนะคะ และช่วงนี้ก็จะ
Thank you, everyone.
พัก15
And
นาที
we will have
นะคะ
15 minutes break
ทำความรู้จักกันพูดคุยกัน
so that you
สบายๆ
can
15 นาที
do
ก่อนที่จะกลับมา
networking,
อภิปรายในหัวข้อ
have a little
Countering
refreshment
fake
before we
news
come back for the
practice and
fake
policy
news,
implication
countering fake
ค่ะ
news
น่าจะกลับ
for the
มา
panel discussion
11 โมงตรงนะคะ
at
เชิญทุกท่าน
11 sharp, please.
เอาละค่ะใกล้จะถึงเวลาเริ่มหลังจากรับประทานเบรกกันแล้วนะคะอีก5นาทีเชิญ
We
ทุกท่าน
have
กลับ
about
มา
5
ในห้
minutes
องสัมม
before
นา
we
นะ
go
คะ
back into the room for the discussion.
Okay, please come back in the seminar room in about 5 minutes after you have done with your break, coffee. The seminar will start promptly at 11 o'clock. เอาละค่ะได้เวลาที่จะเริ่ม
Right, it's time for us to start our panel
ก่อนที่จะ
discussion.
พักรับประทานอาหาร
Before we
ก่อน
have
ก่อนที่
lunch.
พักรับประทานอาหารว่างชากาแฟ
Okay, we've already had tea and
เรียบ
coffee
ร้อย
and
แล้วนะคะ
did
เชิญ
our
ทุกท่านกลับเข้า
networking.
มาในห้องสัมมนา
So
นะ
may I
คะ
invite all of you back into the room, please?
เอาละค่ะสัมมนาวงแรกนี้นะคะก็จะเกี่ยว
Our
ข้อง
panel
กับการ
discussion
รับมือกับข่าว
is
ลวง
on
ข่าวหลอก
countering fake
แนว
news,
ทางนโยบายที่ควรจะเกิดขึ้น
best
ค่ะ
practices and policy implications. So we will be hearing from professionals, both from the press and academia,
ทำอะไรกันบ้างเพื่อรับ
to find out what we can do to counter fake news.
Okay, the first seminar is about to begin. Please come back in the seminar room. The topic of the discussion is countering fake news, best practices and policy implication. You hear first-hand information and direct experience from media members, how to tackle and what should be the guideline of journalists to counter fake news. เอาละค่ะขอต้อนรับทุกท่านกลับเข้ามาสู่เว
So welcome all of you back to the countering fake news panel discussion. The heading is countering fake news, best practices and policy implications. So I would like to introduce the panelists. The first one is Mr. Masato Kajimoto, Journalism and Media Studies Center from the University of Hong Kong, Mr. Nur-Azna Sanusi from Thomson Reuters, Mr. Eric Wishart from Agence France Presse, AFP, Ms. Lucille S. Sodipe from Verifiles, the Philippines, Mr. Mario Brandenburg from German Bundestag or Parliament. The moderator is Professor Pichitra Sukhamoto, the head of the Faculty of Communication Arts, Chulalongkorn University.
is Professor Pichitra Sukhamoto from Faculty of Communication Arts, Chulalongkorn University. So please welcome and enjoy the discussion of countering fake news. I hand over the floor to อาจารย์พิจิตราเชิญนะคะ
Hello. Okay. Welcome everyone to our discussion. This is we decided to have the panel discussion by getting all together the expertise in the different field, and the panel discussion is created with the topic of countering fake news, best practices, and policy implication. So Thailand is quite lucky that we have like all 5 panelists who contribute yourself to come to our session. So we actually want to learn more about you guys, about best practices or even like the case studies that you learn. And actually we have 5 expertise with us now. So let's introduce the first one first. We will start with the professor in academic field. He was my sensei or ajan or professor before. He actually teach me in terms of news literacy. We has a course in Myanmar. He's from the Journalism and Media Studies Center, University of Hong Kong. And as you know that nowadays Hong Kong actually has a kind of the mob going on there. And I want to let you go back to, in the past that during the umbrella movement, Hong Kong University also settled like a fact-checking center for that crisis. So please, everyone, please welcome Dr. Masato Kajimoto from Hong Kong University.
Thank you.
Can I introduce all first? Yes. Actually, the organizer asked me to make this session is kind of more relaxing and fruitful. So I'm not sure if I can do it, but you guys can help me. Okay, we can have ongoing conversation. So can I introduce the second one first? The second one is kind of a group of journalists, and I think according to my research, we actually doing the research on political rumor in Thailand. And we actually analyzed the big data through the political rumor. And we found out that a lot of journalists, they are the very influential people who kind of counter the fake news. So please, everyone, welcome the, the journalist from Thomas Reuters, Azna Sanusi, please. She is now the social media producer, and she's gonna share what the Reuters do to countering fake news. And the second one is from AFP. He is now the specialist project editor. Please, everyone, welcome Eric Wishart. And the last one among the group of journalists, she is now in the part of the Verify, and is actually the independent Filipinos press, and she can explain more about her organization. Please, everyone, welcome Lucille Sodibe. She arrived last night with a delayed flight, but so please welcome her. And the last one, we have the policymaker from German Parliament. He is a representative from German Parliament. He looks quite young for the representative. And he is a committee for IT and intelligence in the committee in the German Parliament. Please, everyone, welcome to Mr. Mario Brandenburg. Okay, our discussion going to be the two sessions. The first one is going to be like a short presentation, not more than maybe now it's about 10 minutes to tell us about the best practices and the case study or any of your experience through your studies. And then after that, we're going to have like a conversation. We will have the floor open for everyone to ask any questions. So we want to have this session more lively. So please, Dr. Masato, can you share us about your study about the fake news, as you are the expertise on the kind of like media and news literacy, what you have learned from the fake news, because now fake news is almost everywhere, especially in social media. So can you share us about through your presentation?
Yes, is on? Okay. All right. So I was told to talk about best practices and policy implications. So I decided to talk a little bit about how I incorporate fact-checking tools and techniques into my teaching when I teach news literacy at my university. So my 10-minute talk is targeting primarily academics or people who are teaching media and news literacy. And secondly, policymakers who are sort of deciding what sort of things have to be taught in public school system. So that's my presentation, and if I could get the slides. Right, so for media educators, one thing we have to realize when we talk about what we so-called now fake news phenomenon is that we are not just talking about inaccuracy of information itself. We are talking about somebody who's creating or producing a massive amount of misinformation for a particular purpose. And what are the motivations? Who's financing their operations? What sort of tools they're using? All sorts of knowledge has to be sort of addressed when you talk about how to fact check information, right? Students cannot just cannot learn how to fact check, but they have to understand the context surrounding why we encounter so much misinformation on our daily basis. So to understand that, if I can make this work.
The clicker is always the problem. Anyone can help us? Yes. Okay.
Okay, all right. So there are lots of research documents available online. Obviously, as an academic, I want to self-promote myself. The one on the left, information disorder in Asia and the Pacific, is a research I'm working on with many other like-minded educators in this region, right? Professor from Taiwan, Malaysia, Indonesia, many other countries. The document on the left is a publication by French government. It also talks about how information manipulation can be detrimental to democratic system. One particular research that I would recommend is this one from Oxford University. And I have 2 bullet points there. These are the key takeaways. Basically, what we have to understand is that this is an organized effort by somebody, right, who's trying to manipulate online conversation through misinformation. And according to their research, you can actually identify at least 1 or 2 political parties and sometimes government who are spending lots of resources in this. So they are the big players in Asia, whether you like it or not. Which is to say, if you are school teachers, inevitably this gets political. And it's extremely difficult in Asian countries to teach news literacy without touching politics, and yet many teachers are hesitant in talking politics in classrooms. So it's something that we should, you should be thinking about. And there are many ways to teach political aspect of news literacy without naming specific politicians. So if you're interested in those techniques, I can probably share the materials that we developed later. So 2 resources, if you're media educators, you can tap on or become a member of, is First Draft News and International Fact-Checking Network. Audrey already mentioned IFCN. So these 2 provide lots of resources for you to understand how to teach fact-checking. So let's start with First Draft News. They made their name in 2017 when they had this project called Cross-Check in France during the presidential election in 2017. They trained lots of journalists on the tools to verify social media rumors, and also they sort of were the driving force behind coordinating different media organizations to work together to fact-check. You know, media landscape can be very competitive. News organizations don't normally work together, right? They would rather compete, right? And if their competitor makes a mistake, yeah, you wanna, you know, pound on that. But instead, our First Draft tried to sort of coordinate everybody. And I'm mentioning this because many students were also involved in this project. And so this is the website, right? As you can see, many news organizations are working together on this. And after this success, it's everywhere now, all around the world. Comprova from Brazil, Cross-Check in Nigeria, in Africa, Check.ph, Verifile was involved in the Philippines, Check Factor in Indonesia was big. So there are many collaborative projects surrounding national elections in our part of the world. And many times these are the collaborations between news organizations and journalism schools and universities. Journalism schools provide lots of their students to help out these kind of operations. Right, we had another one in Crosscheck Australia just recently, and if you pay close attention to one of the logos, that's our university. So we
this or do they have to connect to the universal standard of fact-checking?
Yes and no, and that's actually a nice way to go to the second one, IFCN. So International Fact-Checking Network is from the Poynter Institute in Florida, and they do have a rigorous process of vetting which fact-checkers are considered legit, right? Because anybody can claim, oh, I'm fact-checking, even though you're a political activist. So there are steps that you can go through. And in case of Taiwan Fact-Check Center, for example, IFCN hires third-party academic to vet the organization. And it was me, actually, who has verified Taiwan Fact-Check Center and recommended to IFCN board members. So IFCN also has, if you look at the screen, there's an online course, hands-on fact-checking short course. You can take this course in 90 minutes. And again, if you are new to this, and if you're an educator, I highly recommend to take this course first before you teach your students. Then you understand what sort of standard IFCN upholds when it comes to fact checking. So these are some of the list of the tools that I teach, and then it's quite a lot of open source tools available right now. And if you go to that website, OSINT Essentials, OSINT stands for Open Source Intelligence Tools. Right, there are lots of tools that are available for you to use. And as far as I know, in Thailand, you have access to all of them. The government isn't blocking any of them.
Not yet.
Yeah. Last slide, perhaps. So I do teach a lot of fact-checking and social media verifications, and I was inspired by actually MCOT. Yo is here. So in Thailand, there's this project called Share and Share, and they do very creative ways to disseminate their fact-check results. And I was inspired by that, so I asked my students to produce posters like these to sort of, so these are the actual assignments, and I grade them. Right, so these are kind of practices that I do. So if you are educators, if you have any questions, please ask, and I can answer. Right.
Okay, so this is the beginning of your presentation. So basically, so you think that that course is kind of like standardized by that fact-checking, global fact-checking?
Yes, so when I teach at the university level, or when I train high school teachers, I do use the IFCN standard. And when I train my students, I will tell them that we can talk to news organizations like AFP, for example. We try to collaborate with them. So if we identify good students, we will send them to the actual newsrooms and then work with journalists to...
So you need the journalist skill to support the students.
I think it's a strong incentive for students. If you say, elections coming up, if you do well in this course, you can actually work with the journalists to do this. And that definitely contributes to the society and democratic system, right? So that motivates students.
Okay, so let's move to the journalist part. So I think that in terms of fact-checking, it's quite important that journalists can play the role. And could you just tell us about the experience from Reuters?
I think because my specialty is visual verification, so it's a bit different. Because with text, with things that are posted on social media, I think it's a bit. I think we shouldn't jump into conclusion. Things should be. You have to wait for the dust to settle and wait for someone to confirm something before we can actually confirm that it's fake news. Otherwise, if it's shared within the minute that it was posted, then it's a bit hard for us to, I guess, control the situation down. To you have to not encourage people to spread that information so quickly. That's my view.
So what is your experience about the Reuters? I think you prepare also your presentation.
My name is Nur-Azna. I'm a social media from Reuters. If you're not familiar with what Reuters does is we have text journalists, we have photographers, videographers, we have colleagues from, my colleagues are which button?
Click it.
Okay, so this is the one bolded in orange is the coverage that we have worldwide. So whenever there's events, personally I'm working behind the computers, but I'm also monitoring activities on social media. I guess what's best to check is with the help of my colleagues who are also native in whatever languages that they are based in. It helps us to understand what's going on, and we can actually get, I guess, not have a mistranslation with the eyewitness who are, seeing the events. So just have a bit of what we have cleared through in the past year.
What event is this?
So this is, I think it's a, sorry, there was supposed to be sound. It's just present.
No sound? Sound coming.
It's a lot of natural disaster events that we have covered, these are the things that we need to verify, because we are, if every, for example, every earthquake, every hurricane, they are all, different events. We won't use like something that happened, for example, Japan tsunami, we won't use it for Indonesian tsunami because so we just cannot mislead the information.
So you're going to say that fake news is actually spread very easily during the disaster, natural disaster and crisis, right? Why is that?
I think people are excited. They like the drama of the event. So they sometimes they just get too caught up in the news without actually checking what really happened. So I guess that's when the sharing, false sharing starts early.
So basically people like spread the rumor and also fake news very quickly during the disaster, right?
Yes.
So how the journalists can stop this?
Let me just move on to. Sorry, let me. Okay, as I said earlier, we have a global team that is helping us with the sourcing of the stories as well. So a lot of things play a part. We need to understand what is the trend, the popular social media that is used in different countries. I'm not explaining how social media is used just in Thailand generally. It's just how the global usage is. So, for example, I understand that in Thailand, what's famous, what's popularly used here is WhatsApp and Facebook, right?
You mean in Thailand?
In Thailand.
In Thailand, it's going to be Facebook and Line.
And
WhatsApp is not that popular. We have Facebook, Line, YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's one. But different countries
have a different platform, right?
Yes, correct.
They were
So
in the different platform.
So I guess we need to understand how it is being experienced as an eyewitness. So sorry. So moving on, some of the stories that we covered. One of it is the Palu tsunami. As I said earlier, when the tsunami struck, there were images of the Japan tsunami that was used, which is not true. In our case, we are not only just grabbing off things on the internet and putting up for clients to use or for our news broadcasters to use, because we need to. It's best for us to have contact with the person who filmed it. Then we can truly verify what happened during the event. In this case, we actually managed to speak with the person. She is a mother who ran up to the rooftop of the car park to try and escape the tsunami. She didn't know that it was going to happen, so she just went up. She stayed there for 8 hours before.
So how could you reach her then?
The thing is, she posted first on WhatsApp to family members. So family members kind of shared it with a friend.
In the social media?
On the social media. So that you have to, it's not as easy as finding the person on Facebook, because some people just chose not to have an online profile, for example. So this person, we managed to get by the family friend to get to talk to her. So when we spoke to her, then we verify what had happened during the event. It's much better, I feel, if you get to know what is going on ground, rather than the hearsay of other people who think that they know her. So it's just not as authentic, I feel.
So basically, Reuters think that you have to verify the news and source of news before, and especially the video clip or picture.
Correct.
So how about other platform? Now you have to compete like with other social media platform, UGC, user generate content. They are very quick to upload the picture.
I guess our effort is just putting what we feel and we know is verified. So it's a bit hard. We're not policing we're not shutting down, other things that is false. But when we know that it's verified, we put it out. It's
even later than other platform, other news agency, you need to verify everything before you put on your platform, right?
Yes, we would try to check, especially with local authorities. We understand geolocation, which I will get on earlier, is understanding the location of where the event happened. Because, for example, this event, this particular place, it was shot in different angles. So we have multiple eyewitnesses who filmed and posted, but we can't really get in touch with the rest of them. But at least it looks the same, from different angles.
So
we imagine ourselves that if it is actually accurate, what had happened. So that's how we verify stuff. Secondly, and of course we have to understand that more importantly, like the user who filmed this, she must have felt so traumatic that we can't I guess push her to
a situation that she doesn't
so we
want
have
to be in.
trust the user who we have reached out to. Moving on to the next story, this is the Paileeklee crash, which is in Micronesia. I think my colleagues found this video previously when Facebook previously had a live map, which actually shows the location of where the live streaming happened. So that's one of the ways where we can actually find, because sometimes we can't always rely on Google Translate to get to the search.
So you mean the user actually upload this clip?
This was a Facebook live. So he streamed it live. I think he didn't have any captions on it. So it helped knowing the location of where the crash was, and then we.
So this is the way you verify.
Yes, correct. So that, but this is a great rescue. I'm glad that no one was injured during this event. Yeah. Okay. This is another way, I guess, to include everybody on how you can verify images is the Google reverse image search, which helps. You don't have to have all the fancy apps or all the...
just Google is enough?
Yes, just Google is enough. I mean, I guess it also is accessibility to, I guess, the users on how they can search. I mean, it's a simple right-click Google image search that can help you find the truth. This was actually an effort by our tax colleagues. So what they have done is they found there was, what do you call it? The Myanmar army released this true files, I think, what they're trying to show on what happened on their textbooks, on the army textbooks. But when our colleague Google reversed the image, they found that it's actually a different event. So initially, what should I say? It says, I can't say it now. Let me try to. Now.
This is a different event, right?
Sorry, I can't see the brightness. This says the Bengalis killed local ethnics brutally. But what this photo actually shows, sorry. I'm having a problem with the clicker.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not.
The clicker doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you send
so
somebody.
If I can reach here. This, thank you. This photo was actually the Bengalis being massacred by the Pakistani armies rather than Bengalis.
So the misuse of the photos, right?
So this is I feel this is disinformation. You shouldn't be twisting a photo and claiming that it is one story when it's actually not. And that was not the only example that they made. Oh, sorry. Pressing. Okay, so this is an example. Another example, they said that this is the Bengali refugees moving into Myanmar. But what this photo is actually a Pulitzer Prize photo of Rwandan refugees trying to flee their villages. So it's just a simple Google image search that can help verify story.
Transformed it into black and white.
Yes.
Just transform is like a black and white, and it's make it.
Even alter, even the simple flip of an image, you know, it's altered. It's not correct. You know, so
as a social media producer,
Yes.
to transform the picture from color one to black and white, are there any significant impact to the audience or the user?
Yes, we actually prefer. I mean, we get it as source. We put it out as how it was, you know, displayed. We try not to have any images that's filtered at all. You know, so it's as accurate as how the event happened. That's our efforts in trying to put out the
So
story.
you cannot just only adjust the color or anything, just show the
Correct.
truth
Yes.
through the picture, through the
Yes,
photos.
I mean we are right even to when the photo was shot, what time it was shot, you know. So it's our efforts in keeping the accuracy alive in our publishing. Actually, there's this app called Invid, which is co-credited with AFP. So they have a good verification tool. What it does is, for videos, they will take out different keyframes in a video, and when you with the help of Invid, you can actually also Google reverse image search, and then you can see where the video was used previously. If I think that's quite a great effort on AFP side. Oh, so another case study is recently there was a conflict between India and Pakistan, which is a quite touchy story. So who tweets it is also important. So one of these tweet, if I can remember correctly, the one on the left is actually tweeted by a politician, and the one on the right is tweeted by a journalist. Right, yeah, so it actually shows a screen grab of what they believe is an airstrike shooting towards the village or the madrasa that they think that are housing the terrorists. But what actually happened is, sorry guys, can you play the YouTube link? What they didn't realize is they actually screen grab part of a video game, a computer game. So I think it's quite dangerous, you know, especially if you're a politician and you're a journalist. You're just
But both of them tweet with this clip.
Correct. I guess they got it from another tweet or another source, you know, without checking it. You know,
But the journalist who tweets it is not from Reuters.
No, they're not. Unfortunately. So we try not to rush things. I mean, it's. I think we can go back to the PowerPoint now. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Go back to the PowerPoint, please. กลับไป PowerPoint ค่ะ
Thank you so much. So I think that.
So how could you check with the video clip? Also use the Google?
You can use the Google image search. I mean, if you were to watch the YouTube clip, you can see that the person running it, I mean, they're not looking very natural. They're not looking exactly like a person because it's video game, it's computer graphics, right?
No, but as the audience, we actually, it's so difficult to.
It's easy. I guess it takes a while for you to get used to. I mean, you need to observe, be a bit more observant. You know, if you feel that something that is not natural, even when talking, if somebody is breathing in at the wrong timing, you know, it's something is not natural, then I guess it's if your instinct tells you that's quite strange, then I guess you can try to dig in it a bit deeper and see whether, you know, if it's true or not. You know, you can't just say, oh, it's.
I'm sure as a producer, as you and me as a mother of one kid, so I don't have that skill to identify the picture.
You will. I mean, you can have to sense that, you know, it's a bit not natural. Okay. Sure. So moving on. Cool. This photo was tweeted on the Indian side. So on the same story, the Pakistani side also did a similar thing. So this Pakistani journalist claimed that the plane crashed because they said that they shot two planes, and they only found one plane and couldn't find the other. So they claimed that the plane crashed in one of the village. But what happened was they actually accidentally used a plane crash from 3 years before. You know, so even that, if it's not accurate, then we wouldn't put it out. So I guess we just have to be a bit more sensitive with what we tweet, it's not as simple as just clicking retweet or share.
So
It's
basically,
just,
during the war, it seems like politicians also, using the image to
Yes.
mislead people, and it's actually disinformation that they have the intention to make people misunderstanding.
well, I mean, it's not my part to say. I guess if we don't know what their intentions are. If they feel that they think that this is it, if they believe it is without checking it, then I guess it is a mistake that they had to retweet it.
So actually, I also want to ask all the journalists who are here that if the politicians doing that, how the journalists can interact with, with the political intention that they want to mislead people. How about Reuters? What did you do with this?
I think mainly we have because our colleagues will be my tax colleagues will be doing the fact checking. So they will be. I mean, if they feel that this certain politician will be tweeting this particular image, they will try to get in touch with the politician and see where they got it from. It's always good to understand where they got the image from or where they got the information from. But if that has been established, then I guess we can see to compare with other contributors to see whether we can balance it. Yeah, okay. Whether it's accurate.
So all your case study there already. Okay. So we also moved to AFP. So you also prepared something to show us about how the AFP can countering fake news, right?
It's not up.
Clicker.
But it's not up.
Okay.
Okay. That's not the first slide. Anyway. So AFP, I mean, the three big international news agencies are AFP, Reuters, and AP, and we go back to 1835. So, I mean, I would just say, the slide's not very clear, but anyway, we've got four basic approaches. I think one thing we haven't quite touched on is the erosion of trust in media. There's been under sustained attack from Donald Trump, who calls us the enemy of the people in fake news media. I think you were just at a conference where Hun Sen in Cambodia said journalists produce fake news. So, I mean, and this has had an effect on trust in the media in general. So I think one thing in AFP, we want to establish trust, explain that. Also, partnerships are very important. You talked about INVID. I think also, as you just said, I mean, conflicts, natural disasters, elections, and medicine, health are four major areas where there's a lot of fake information. And let's just use the fake news term as a kind of generic. I mean, it doesn't translate into Chinese, and in Indonesia they call it hoax journalism, I think. So, I mean, to me, fake news is fake news stories made to look real, but they're part of this whole disinformation ecosystem, which can go from a malicious WhatsApp message in India that leads to people being lynched to a Russian disinformation campaign. So it covers a multitude, but just for sort of verbal shorthand, we can call it fake news. And final is promoting media literacy and outreach education, which is, I thought it was very interesting what Audrey said about you're going to start teaching media literacy from school age. So to kind of show the age of AFP, I mean, was it Marshall McLuhan said the medium is the message. So I don't know where that fitted in 1840, because we used to send our stories by carrier pigeon. So it was faster than sending them by train. So this is an actual photograph of an AFP dispatch being attached to a pigeon. But if we move it up to nowadays, people say, why are we talking about this so much? I think we have this perfect storm. I've talked about this quite a lot. I think there's probably three elements: the ease with which you can create and upload fake information. And I mean, the examples that you just gave show that a lot of the so-called fake news is actually real material that is just shown out of context. a lot of it's not actually, probably most of what we would call fake news, at least when it comes to images and videos, are real. They've either been manipulated or they've been shown out of context. So the ease with which you can upload fake information, I think toxic political and economic situations around the world. I mean, I was talking to Mario earlier. Fake news in Germany really peaked with the migrant crisis when Merkel was. I did an innocent selfie with a migrant who then became a terrorist on social media, and it kind of destroyed his life and did Merkel a lot of damage politically. The Brexit campaign in Britain, the political situation in America, the Philippines, which you can talk about, and Myanmar with the Rohingyas. So the climate is right in many countries for this. And then you add, of course, the third thing, the vector, which is social media. And you put them all together, and as I say, this is actually a video in the background of a perfect storm. And so I think this is why we're having this conversation today. So next. Transparency. So talking about trust, I had lunch about a month ago with Alan Rusbridger, the former Guardian editor. And it was interesting. His definition is, before we lived in a vertical media world, journalists was up here and passed the news down to people who are not only happy to believe what we told them, they actually paid to advertise in our newspapers or whatever. That vertical model has been broken. We now live in a horizontal world where, as you said, everybody's media now, you can upload. So journalists have a lot of trouble reconciling living in a vertical world before and now living in this horizontal one. So the days are over. Just because I work for AFP, you got to believe what we tell you. So I think this is why transparency in your working methods as a journalist is now essential. And I was tasked. I've got this. I was an editor-in-chief of AFP before. Now I do what they call special editorial projects, which have included me writing an AFP charter, which is like our basic guiding principles. The editorial standards and best practice, which are the ethics, our ethics code. Next. How are we doing here? Oops, back. Anyway, the last one, it doesn't matter. Last one was the 20 principles of sourcing, and I've just finished it back. Like having a yo-yo this. These are the sourcing rules, and
particularly online?
And I've just finished. It took me quite a long time. Doing a style book from scratch is a bit like working in a Siberian salt mine, but not as much fun, I would say. This was a real labour of love, so I've just finished it. So, I mean, Reuters and the AP, I think, have always put these kind of documents online. So when I finished these documents, we decided at AFP to follow suit. So I think it's very important now that these documents are available on AFP.com. So if somebody sees an AFP photo or a story, you don't have to trust us. I don't actually like the concept of trust. It implies a kind of leap of faith. If you want to understand why a piece of news, content, video, story from AFP is credible, you can go on the AFP website and see our editorial rules. Our rules on editing photographs, editing video. If we use an anonymous source, what are the rules on anonymous sourcing? So I think to establish or try to re-establish trust in the media, I think the media has to be more transparent in its methods. Okay? So, next. Okay, partnerships are very important. You can't do this alone. And first of all, we have done a lot. We do technological partnerships, and we were partners in developing this InVid platform, which is basically a platform for verifying uploaded content. And I'll just show a couple of kind of silly, very basic Photoshop examples. This was supposed to be Osama bin Laden after he was killed by the Americans in 2012. And it's actually a scene from a movie. And what did you call this? The best frame? There's a keyframe, yeah. So this was the keyframe from the movie that matched the fake one. So they took out this presumably wounded soldier and put in Osama bin Laden. This one is a classic. This got huge circulation. They called it Putin's Tsar of the World, except that when you actually look at the original photograph, he wasn't there. Very funny. Pretty crude, but quite effective, actually. So this is a good example of easy manipulation to create some fake news. So this kind of these technical partnerships to develop verification tools are important. Yeah.
So that digital tools and partnership is only focusing in European country? Or
No, I mean
Asian, for example, Asian news is also like
yes, I mean,
verify there?
Well, yeah, well, very much so. So now we get to fact checking. Our first fact checking operation was a partnership in Africa and South Africa called Africa Check, which has been very successful and is now exists in English and French in Africa. You can't really make that out very well, but it's a map of the world, just like your map of the world. And AP, I spoke in Bulgaria last week about fake news, and AP had the same map. I don't think the map really changes that much. Although if you do in America, America's always in the middle of the map, so that's the change. So we've got about 40 full-time people working on social networking and fact-checking in our regional headquarters around the world. Asia Pacific headquarters for AFP in Hong Kong. But we're also training, we have an extensive training program, so in all our journalists in our bureaus are learning how to verify. Because in this day and age, I say, we're as much news verifiers as news gatherers. I think 50% of the time you're out getting news, I think the other 50% now you're verifying stuff that's uploaded online. And it's everywhere. So the AFP Fact Check network extends around the world, including very much so in Asia. And Masato mentioned First Draft. It's a non-profit based out of New York, London now. It moves around. It was New York now, I think it's in London. They specialise in verification, training in media literacy, and AFP is a partner in that. You mentioned the cross-check. This was a partnership for the French elections. And as you said, I mean, media are competitive, but in some cases I think it's good to work together. I see absolutely no point of 20 media all verifying the same statement by a politician with the same piece of uploaded content. So these were just some of the media partners for this cross-check project for the French election. And basically any fake or false information that was uploaded, we either spotted or was signaled to us by Audrey. Internet users was verified. And this was quite a famous example. Did Emmanuel Macron open an offshore account? So this was the fact check, but you'll see it said cross-check by, and there's a list of about 8 or 9 different media. So that gave it more credibility, the fact that, you know, who fact checks the fact checkers. But if you can say, well, half a dozen media, respected media, fact checked this and all came to the same conclusion, I think it gave it more credibility. I was actually a bit skeptical. I thought, you know, we hear about fake news in America, but are you going to get fake news in the French election? The very first day, the first thing that went up was an AFP graphic from my company, which showed, it was a graphic of candidates in the French election, and one had been added. Somebody had taken our graphic and just added an extra presidential candidate. So I think the first thing we fact checked was our own graphic. So it showed you how fast, even in the French elections, this disinformation can get spread. Keep going. Yeah, so this is the latest one. It's called Reverso. This is in Argentina. This is the biggest ever collaborative fact-checking project. There's more than 100 partners, and it's for the Argentine elections in October of this year. Huge project, and I think they're expecting a lot of Russian interference in this. So it's a big fact-checking operation.
When you do the partnership like fact checking, do you need to do the as a platform that all partnership together?
Yeah, we usually upload it to like a blog. If you look at this, and there's actually, that's the, oops, I'm on the pointer. How to get back? Back, okay. It's actually a website that, and we upload the fact checks. And we also put them out on social media. Everybody puts them out on their own social media, so it's spread quite a long, quite far. Okay. So this is organised by AFP First Draft, pop-up newsroom, which is a bit like First Draft. Is that fair, Masato? Is it? Yeah. And Chicaro, which is, I think, Argentina's biggest fact-checking project. And again, sorry, I usually use a different clicker. You have to work with big tech, right? So, with the support of means financed by
them.
Yeah, partly financed by Facebook, Google News Initiative, WhatsApp, which is is part of Facebook, Illuminate, which was created by the founder of eBay. So AFP and Facebook have a relationship, a commercial relationship, a form of partnership. We have agreements in 21 countries now to do fact-checking for Facebook. And sorry, it's a bit small, but basically there's a private platform where they upload, where they post potentially suspect content that's been flagged, and we fact-check it. We work completely independently, editorially from Facebook, and it's up to us to decide what we're going to fact.
So who decided it's going to take down, or?
Well, this is the big question with Facebook. So we're in 21 countries. We just added Poland. We're in several countries in Asia. So this explains that if a Facebook page or website repeatedly shares misinformation, Facebook reduces the overall distribution of the page or website, not just individual false articles. They also cut off their ability to make money or advertise. So basically, if we flag something as false, Facebook will push it down in the algorithm, and then if they repeatedly offend, the page of the website will get downgraded. This was a story that we posted of from just Hong Kong last week of somebody. There was a video saying that Hong Kong police had shot a protester. We have our own fact-checking site called AFP Fact Check, and it exists in 3 or 4 languages. And this was one about the yellow vests in Paris. And Facebook will flag the content on the Facebook page that it's been fact-checked by AFP and to look at it. Now, they downgrade it, they don't take it off the site. And this, as you know, is a big discussion. So if you want an answer to that, you can ask Mark Zuckerberg. We
actually invite Facebook here, but they cannot come. So they apologize for that.
Yeah. So just to finish very quickly, sorry I've been going on a bit, but finally, I think the final part is very much education, outreach, media literacy. AFP has a formal agreement partnership with the Hong Kong University Journalism School. We, in partnership with they call them the JMSC, that's it. If you ever come to Hong Kong, it's a very charming old building from 1910, probably one of the few buildings from 1910 that still exist in Hong Kong. And I'm almost finished away. And clicker slightly slows me down. Okay. So with Hong Kong Journalism School, we translated the ethics code that I wrote into simplified Chinese, which was quite an interesting project. We should get it into traditional as well. And we also, we take interns, not just in Hong Kong, in different countries. We come and speak, and Masato and I work, we talk together quite a lot about fake news. We were in Laos and Vientiane about a month ago. So I think it's important to get the message across. And don't all laugh, this is when I had slightly shorter hair. Hold on. So we also have
You have the
Sorry
clip.
about that. I really was in two minds about this, but anyway. But it was just to show we also have a partnership with South Island School, which is a secondary school. And we should probably have a partnership with primary as well as, I mean, Audrey, you said that you're starting in primary school. So I think, I mean, really fundamentally, and I did a panel with Nur-Azna, who's a famous politician in Malaysia quite recently. And she says, yeah, she very much believes in media literacy from primary age. So that's basically it. So just to sum up very quickly, if I can get my last slide up. Oops. Nope. Somebody blocking it. Don't worry, we'll get there. Gosh. Got it. It was you. To sum up, transparency in editorial procedures to establish trust, as I say, partnerships in fighting disinformation, including developing verification tools and fact-checking, and a focus on key areas. And I think you can fact-check the five-legged dog or the three-headed whatever. But I think if you are fact-checking and you don't have unlimited resources, you've got to focus on elections, conflicts, disasters, and health and science. And finally, promoting media literacy and outreach to education. And as Audrey said, I'm also very active on Twitter, so, and as I say, if you follow me, I promise to follow you back. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next we're gonna ask the Philippines. I think you guys have also a big problem. I read the articles about disinformation, architects of disinformation.
Yes.
It's not just only like fake news around, but during the election, the fake news are with the government also somehow like also release the kind of rumor and fake news.
Yes.
So can you tell us about, how could you counter the fake news in the Philippines?
Okay. So I guess coming from like two large media news agencies, we're really very lean but mean. Verifiles, our organization, has been around for 11 years. We don't produce news, we don't do breaking news, so we produce our special reports and investigative pieces. And we also train fellow journalists, like community journalists, and recently, because of fact-checking, student journalists on how to report underreported issues. I'm pretty sure everyone is very much aware of our interesting and colorful president. So since he won in the 2016 elections, we have noticed that there's been a surge in disinformation. Now, it's not to say that it's directly related. A lot of the disinformation that we fact-check, we find benefits him and the administration. And a lot of it, it's actually basically the nature is any disinformation or exaggeration that props up his policies or him as a president, and then the disinformation that attacks his critics. Even critics who, well, not even critics, former presidents who have, long been dead. So anyway, just to begin, Eric already, I need to press this, sorry. There you go, okay. So Eric already mentioned that AFP is a third-party fact-checker in 21 countries, right? In the Philippines, there's 3 of us. So there's AFP, Rappler, another online news organization, and Verifiles. So this is like a screenshot of like a simple report we did in April that Facebook is finally rolling out its third-party fact-checking program in the Philippines. By the way, Facebook is like the most favored social media platform in the country. And if I am not mistaken, there's research that the Philippines is #1 in social media usage.
In terms of spending time per
yes,
day,
in the
right?
world. We spend like 4 hours in social media.
In Thailand it's more or less
like
the same.
Yeah, yes. We're not, in Thailand it's more or less the same.
Or maybe because the net is so slow, so we spend so much time on the screen.
There's that, and also Facebook became free. There's such a thing as they had a partnership with our major telco companies. So they have this free Facebook, and we have found out that it's been gamed. It's so easy to, post a news. You don't see the photo, you just read the headline, and then you assume that it's really news. So that's how it spreads. So when we announced a partnership, there was a large furor on social media. A lot of digital influencers, a lot of, they're called diehard Duterte supporters, a lot of trolls protested. They filed like a petition to sign up to say Rappler and Verifiles. At the time, AFP wasn't one of the third-party fact-checkers yet. They were questioning the choice because we were biased, partisan, corrupt, unpatriotic. Those are just like some of the words that have been used to describe both organizations. There was even a petition to, Filipinos, we should now transfer to VK. But nothing really happened. I mean, it's not free in our country, so no one's going to leave Facebook. After that, the government came in. They demanded a meeting with Facebook executives to, again, question their choice of organizations. They cited as examples stories that we've done before, investigative pieces, as proof that we are biased against the government. Okay. I guess what they didn't know, because we are a small organization, we started in 2008. I think we were the first non-profit online media company at a time when people were saying, what's online journalism? Do you have a paper? Are you aired on TV? Do you air on radio? So that's why they didn't exactly know what the Verifiles was. So these are just some of the issues that we discuss: human trafficking, election stories, reporting on people with disabilities, road safety, framing it as a public health issue, the environment, and recently, fact-checking. Next slide. There you go. So in 2016, as I mentioned, we began our fact-checking initiative. We called it simply Verifiles Fact Check. Most media organizations really fact-check during the elections. But since we've found that there are a lot more claims that need to be verified, we decided to continue it. So we were the first organization to have a sustained fact-checking initiative in the country. What we verify, it's been mentioned earlier, I just need to make the distinction. Fact-checking is an umbrella term, right? So there's fact-checking, which applies to statements by public figures. And by public figures, we don't just mean like public officials. Anyone who can influence policy, who can influence public opinion. Business people, heads of nonprofits, large nonprofits. And then we also have our verification. We really focus, because of our limited resources, we really focused on fact-checking statements by public figures. So these are just samples of the things that we fact-check. If you notice in the upper right corner, there's that stamp. That's one sample of verification. Before, we did it on a weekly basis. So we called it like This Week in Fake News, something like that. The most viral item that went around on social media. Okay, so, sorry. All right. We all know that verification is not really new. If you don't verify, I don't think you can call yourself a journalist if you don't do it. It's just the basic thing. So as a discipline, we've always been doing fact-checking as a discipline of verification. But as a form of accountability journalism, it's fairly new, at least in our country, in the Philippines. We became a part of the International Fact-Checking Network in 2017. So this is kind of like an old screenshot of that.
How many in Philippines, the Philippines that have the
3, including AFP. So there's Verifiles, Rappler, and then, well, technically AFP is all over the world. So,
So it's
2
like a
local
hub of
media
fact-checking in
organizations.
Asia, I think.
Wow, thank you for that. Yes, I will take that. Yes. Okay. So maybe I also need to mention that our fact-checking initiative actually began in a school. It was a class project by one of our founding trustees, Yvonne Chua. So I guess what we always say this whenever we have talks because we want to encourage everyone and say that you can actually fact check, but you need to follow certain stringent procedures in order to do that. Later on, I'll be showing you a DIY guide that we produce for fact checking. Okay, so we can sum up what we do. Basically, we touch on 4 kinds of disinformation. We fact check false claims. Anything that, a pronouncement that goes against documents, laws, data, or any fact. Flip-flops. When, say for example, a senator or someone from the parliament says, I am now for death penalty, but years ago he was not. Then we call him out and say that he flip-flopped on the issue. I mean, without any new evidence or any new data. You backtrack on a promise, that's also a flip-flop. We also produce fact sheets. It's basically for issues or pronouncements that need to be contextualized. They're not really false, they're not really misleading, but it still can benefit with additional factual information. And of course, fake news, the verification of a lot of the claims that go around on Facebook and even YouTube and all that.
Your organization is really targeting to just only the politicians or political issue?
Mainly that, yes, because there are a lot of organizations who verify misinformation online. But as for pronouncements, when you watch the news and then you just hear, say for example, maybe the vice president or the president say something, that's what we try to fact check because there's such a few media organizations do that. It's not easy.
Dare to do that.
or
dare
maybe
to do that.
dare to do that. It's not easy and it's very tedious. So partnerships, as has been mentioned, is very important. And well, I guess our team is very fortunate because our bosses believe that this is something that we should do as journalists, especially during this time. Okay, next. All right. So briefly, sorry, I have a cheat sheet. Okay, this is if you see this column, we were questioned: were we a fact checker or a fact blocker? The one who made a column is a former communications assistant secretary. So she was a celebrity, and then she was appointed as a communications secretary because she was one of the more strong and popular, famous supporters of the president. So this was, I think, 2 months after we launched the third-party fact-checking. We noticed that a lot of viral posts came from her Facebook page. So at first, she was sharing a lot of stories from a website called Good News Network PH, Good News Network Philippines. So at first, we were noticing, oh, okay, so it's like she just, the website just plagiarized a news report from a larger media organization. So it was nothing, just going viral. Most of it are basically good news, positive things that the government has been doing that the media also reports on. And then eventually we noticed that the headline started to become, wait, is that true? And then when we compare it with the actual news report, we'll see that it's missing a paragraph that adds context to the story, or it tweaked the headline a little. Really, really little things. So we started to explain how this is not true, how this is misleading. So because of, we also rated it on Facebook, and because, as Eric said, Facebook will downrank the posts. We saw this. I distinctly remember, it was I think a day or two before, a colleague and I were discussing that. Are we really doing something? Is there really an effect? Because it seems like we fact check, we do this, we verify, but nothing's happening. And then when we saw this, oh, it's real. The partnership is working. She makes a lot of important points. Some are valid, a lot are not. But when you finish reading the article, you will find out that we touched on her bottom line. It's really the ads that they get from the website. So that's why they called us a fact blocker. So there. So as I said, fact checking is, well, tedious. It's not very easy. But again, we were discussing with my boss. We've been fact checking now for 3 years. I think I asked her this question on our second year. Do you think we're making an impact? Because I don't think anyone is minding us. We're small, not a very big group. Then last year, in December, we reviewed a lot of the fact checks that we did, the reactions. We realized that, we're finally starting to gain traction. So these slides are just samples of public figures that some owned up to their mistake, some denied and said, no, Verifiles is still wrong. You're nitpicking. That's not the point. My point is, some issued non-apologies. Even Mocha, the Assistant Secretary, on a latter fact check said, I am mistaken. Verifiles is right. So, Joe Verlaria is a known blogger affiliated with the opposition. We fact-check a post of hers calling a project a part of the Duterte administration's project when it was not. It was like part of a previous administration's project. So she said, thank you for fact-checking, and this means that I just need to be careful with my facts next time. Those are positive ones. So the next one is, former chief legal counsel of the president, and now the spokesperson, the third in 3 years, the third presidential spokesperson. I'm sorry, I can't. Okay, so the Philippines pulled out of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, in 2017. No, in 2018, and by March of this year, oh no, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. By March of this year, we don't belong anymore to the ICC. Now, in defending that decision, thanks. In defending that decision, the presidential spokesperson mentioned that the Philippines contributed like 25% of the ICC's budget. And we were like, whoa, 25%. We're contributing more than, large countries. And then 28, actually, which he said. When we double checked, it was actually 0.28. So we did a fact check, and then this is his, we call it a non-apology. Verifiles was right, but that's not the point. That's what he said.
Yeah.
I am so sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Right on. Yeah, there. It's okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't. Okay. Okay, they fixed it. And here. So this is a letter of the Vice President to the London School of Economics when she mentioned, she mentioned a wrong fact in her speech about the provinces in the country who were the poorest and where political dynasties also are proliferating. So after a while, I think we were trying to get the official transcript. We were trying to get so many. We called LSE and all. We couldn't get the official transcript. And then finally, when we did, she issued this. So this was issued, and then we also ran that apology after we ran the fact check. So there. So I guess I just want to share with everyone, and if anyone is interested, that's the link to a DIY guide that we produced, and we've also published it. Just recently, we published hard copies of that because we believe at Verifiles that anyone can be a fact checker. But we also believe that it needs a team and it needs partnerships and you need time to do it. That's it.
It's actually full time to do it too, right?
Yes.
So, okay, we move to the policy side because it's run out of time. So, how about in Germany? I think you are the only policy maker here. So, why the German actually, launched the laws against the fake news and also kind of like intervene to the platform to react with the fake news. Can you tell us about experience?
Yes, sure. So I think it was already mentioned that with, I need the clicker as well. No problem. That with the refugee crisis or migrant crisis, some things changed in Germany, so I'll come back to that real quick. So the agenda, fake news, when did it start? And this will answer your question. So it's the German view on it, I would say, and some statistics, because some things are different between Europe and Asia. So the average German doesn't spend 4 hours on Facebook. So there's a bit of a difference, and I need to share that numbers that we are basically share common ground to start a discussion. Then I'll talk about the steps taken. So we passed the law, the Netzwerkdurchsetzungsgesetz. We Germans love long words. So this is why the web community called it NetzDG, Network Enforcement Act. I will share that. Quick spin on what the EU is doing, so because they're very active there. And since I was a techie before making it to Parliament, a quick view on how artificial intelligence can help us. We are heavily looking into that, and there are some pros and cons and some more measures, and then basically we are done. So when did fake news start? Real quick, don't want to waste time here because basically Eric already said that. So disinformation is nothing new, especially Katrin had it in her opening remark, being from Germany, historically seen. Unfortunately, we had some experiences with that. We were probably the ones misusing the printing press the first time in history, and we had that outcome. And therefore, it was always there, but the topic was not burning. But then with all the changes, more channels, micro-targeting, social media, and basically the political will to misuse it. And this is what's changed, basically, that brought the topic up to us. So it started with Trump, but it was more in academia, and some politicians took care. But then really when the migrant crisis kicked in Germany, it became a mega topic. So just to share some numbers. So I took Facebook as an example. So, but the right graphics, it's hard to see. It's basically, it says which social media platforms are you using. And the first would be YouTube, the second would be WhatsApp, and the third would be Facebook. So 32 million Germans are using Facebook. It's I think it's decreasing, to be honest. It's 38% of the population, because for the kids, Facebook become actually uncool when mommy and daddy signed up. And
Same in Thailand.
And mommy and daddy didn't like Facebook when fake news was spreading. So it's a lose-lose situation, and therefore it more moved to other platforms. Our biggest newspaper, the Bild Zeitung, sells 1.5 million examples a day. So just that you still get the idea between 32 million and 1.5 million a day. If the numbers are correct from my team, for Thailand it's 45 million, on Facebook it's 71%. So it's definitely more people using that channel. And as well, interesting, if you ask people, it's from 2018, which channel do you use to be informed in political discussions? So still television owns it with 24%. That's probably more to the elderly in our society. Then it's websites, but the websites basically of the companies or the political parties, which to some extent is a plus. And then it's social media. So, but at least this is something you can work with, to be honest, if people still have that feeling to go to the actual website. Nevertheless, the beginning in the political system, they thought, okay, that's more or less a social media problem. If I'm not on social media, that's the tech stuff. It doesn't happen in the real world. So, but that was a relatively ignorant view of some politicians, because if it's in social media, if it's in the media. They all have their social media newsrooms. Even journalists were not trained for that coming up, especially politicians were not trained. So there were no borders between online and offline. So they were thinking about a security which was not there. So basically they were directly going into mass media. And as mentioned, Now I have the clicker problem as well. That was the moment when we had to become active. So fake news in Germany, just to give you an idea, 8 out of 10 fake news are around refugees and crime. So that's basically a massive problem used by right-wing channels and basically right-wing media. And that's the picture which was mentioned, Ms. Merkel, our chancellor, doing a picture with a migrant or a refugee, and basically it says 700 euro for Christmas money for every refugee, more or less. So, and I mean, this went viral, and people were starting to share it, and so obviously that's not true, but some things in a crisis, as learned, if there's a crisis, people do not really question, they don't have the time, so, and unfortunately this spread it, and then there was basically the discussion in the political sector started, and then later on Germany passed a law. But I want to share something with you, which I've seen on Republika, that's one of our social media and media fairs in Germany. There was a guy from Slovakia, and this shows how fake news basically or become fake campaigns and how advanced they are. So what you see here, you don't have to really understand it. It's Slovakian, I can't read it by myself. But the thing is, the presidential candidate, Zuzana Čaputová, she is now the president, luckily, she is a liberal, was basically targeted by right-wing activists to put her into, she's Jewish and George Soros would control her out of America, and she's just a puppet, so that was the storyline. And the real dangerous thing is, if you see the right picture, they started to manipulate her nose, because there's the saying that Jews do have a hooked nose, and they didn't really change the content or the wording. They were just preparing the pictures to give her a hooked nose that people by themselves can find out, oh look, she has a hooked nose. She must be Jewish, George Soros must control her. And that's absolutely another level to just changing a headline and hope it goes through. I mean, this is unfortunately super professional. And that's what they are facing in Slovakia. So I would say the closer you come to Russia, the more professional the approach gets, unfortunately. So, and this is why basically we had to react at some way. And if you think what's on the roadmap, there was a paper or a demo that AI, artificial intelligence, was able to copy a voice within 3.8 seconds, and you cannot find out if it's you or if it's basically the artificial intelligence created voice. So in 2 weeks, maybe Barack Obama might call you guys and ask if you want to buy a pizza. And he really sounds like Barack Obama. And if you think what that means for the faking things, I mean, that's unfortunately very, very massive. And the big data and micro-targeting, I think everybody knows it. Compared with that, plus some social bots and a troll farm, you're good to go. And this is what we are facing. And so I guess this is why academia and we are all sitting here and trying to see how we can defend on that. The German approach, how to defend, was the NetzDG, so the Network Enforcement Act. And to be honest with you, since I'm a liberal, and normally I would say we are a government party, unfortunately at the moment we are in the opposition, there is some light and there is some shadow with that law. So, in quick, what does that law say? That law tells the platforms if content is obviously illegal, whatever that means in a law system, it has to disappear within 24 hours. Or the platform can get fined up to 50 million per case. So, and that's a massive statement. So, since we are talking about it here, and also Audrey mentioned it this morning, so there was an impact, and on the pro side, platforms now have to issue a report about what they are doing, how many articles were flagged, if they took them down, if a lawsuit was necessary, and that on. So that's very positive, because data means transparency, and we hear that transparency is one of the weapons you have against fake news. Platforms have to name a dedicated contact. So I had to smile when you said Facebook could not show up. So I'm so sorry for them that they couldn't find the time. But this is, they have to reply now. So that's also a plus. And platforms started to cooperate with local fact checkers because the pressure was rising. In Germany, it's Kollektiv, but it's many others. So, but they then started from basically their will. It's always better to assign them because they saw, okay, there's something going on, we have to react. The downside, being a liberal, so if you think you're the provider, you're a Facebook, there is a comment which somehow can be wrong or cumbersome. So you have three choices. You start a lawsuit, or you contact German justice. It takes too long. So you pay 50 million, or you just take it down because it's some comment from somebody somewhere. So which way would you go? And from your smiling, I see that you know what I mean. So that's the problem of overblocking. And this is where we are scared. So if you basically find them too hard, or your scenario to punish them is too hard, then they might go the easy way and just take everything offline. And this, in the end, leads a bit to outsourcing your legal system, because you're not deciding anymore what's okay and what's right or wrong and what's just stupid but acceptable. Basically, you force a US company, in that case, to do it. And how should they know what's still German humor, what's not okay in our history? So they basically can't. And this somehow endangers the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. And this is why we are criticizing the law. And if you have a look at the reports they're issuing, you can see some signs, because we absolutely think that you need to be active. But if there is a false statement, it has to be out there for a while. You have to react very, very fast. So absolutely, on the side of Audrey, it needs to basically addressed, but it should not disappear. Because this is basically just giving them what they want. Look, it's censorship. But I was right. So that's not a perfect solution to it, and this is why the NetzDG somehow is helpful. But on a meta level, it's a problem, and we are still discussing on that one. So, I don't know. How can I come back? Steps taken by the European Union? No, that's actually too far. Okay. More steps taken in Germany. So to the left side, that's actually the real report. So it's publicly available. You can just Google for it, and then you see basically what Facebook took down and what they were doing in Germany. So relatively interesting. The next thing we did, we had a special hearing in the committee. It's called Digital Agenda, to transform Germany in a digital way. And this is the bigger idea of somehow building a digital resilient democracy, because what we are discussing now are laws and tools, but in the end you need the citizens to really understand what's going on there. You need to empower your citizens to really see this is right or wrong and to step up against it. So this is what we're working on. I speed up for fact-checking projects. We heard that, independent organizations, and some cool private organizations as well. I just want to share two examples with you. That one is called Hoax Map, and one is called Political Dashboard. It's done by the Technical University Munich. So on the left side, that's the Hoax Map, because you don't always, it does not necessarily need to be something which is important for whole Germany, but just create whatever rape or something close to your neighborhood. And so that's super dangerous, because it might never make it to mass media, but people there are going nuts. And this is the approach of Hoax Map, to show people, okay, what's wrong around me? Did somebody try to fool me? There are, for example, local elections, whatever, and it's very efficient to basically spread fake news decentral. You don't always need mass media, so it's very efficient if you just bring it into their private life and people think, oh no, nobody would fake that. I mean, why would they do that for my little city or community? So basically HoaxMap is tackling that. And the political dashboard, they are using all the APIs which the networks have, or we force them to have to some extent. And there basically you can see how much money they spend on political advertising. So we had that in the opening speech as well. So if you want to spread something wrong, and you invest massive amounts of money, and basically you can just see it up there, people don't want to believe it anymore, because they say, okay, look, you pay for it, that's probably not reality. So it's all about creating places and empowering people to become fact checkers, even if they're not participate in the network, just for themselves. So to learn them and train them that this can be fun and it's cool the moment you see, oh, they didn't fool me. You know, and that's the moment where everybody is happy, and this is where we need to push the people to somehow. Steps taken in the European Union. I will basically skip more of them for the sake of time. We had cross-check, where basically they were helping and financing with the French election, the European dialogue, because as shown with the example of Slovakia and the example in Germany, I would say it's different levels of fake news, different approaches, so it's super interesting for the European countries to talk to each other, to find out how they do it over here and can represent what happened over there. So this is basically the European dialogue, and there is an EU task force especially dealing with our friends in Russia, because they sometimes have interests as well, especially in a European election. So they are just there to see basically what all these nice trolls farms are doing and if these people are active. So, and basically that's part of the game. I would say that we have to check that as well. Future measures. So there are many initiatives targeting school classes to basically go into the schools and to tell the kids, look, this is how you might find out that's a fact or that's probably not true. For one easy example, so because it's kids, it has to be easy, then you can tell them, look, I mean, real news normally got many likes and not that many shares. If something has like whatever 30,000 shares and only 12 likes, there might be something wrong with the bot network. So it's not a real, you cannot really nail it down that this works, but just to give kids an idea, look, this is odd, and maybe go to another website as well and check it. So, and it's interesting to see that kids really want to learn also about copyrights and stuff. You're on Instagram, oh, then basically your media now. And so it's really important to explain them and to make them kind of immune against the easy approaches. Using modern technology, I'll come to that. Facilitate open data, absolutely. I mean, the keynote speech was exactly about that. The more data sources you open up, the more data you bring out, the easier it is to verify that if there are 10 buckets and one looks odd, I mean, that's the lie. So it's all about transparency, offering media competency, and especially to journalists and politicians. Unfortunately, both are species who thinks they know everything. So it's really hard to sell them trainings. But if we are honest, many of them are interested now because they found out that they are part of the problem. So you have to train them as well. It's not fair to run into the schools and tell the kids you need to learn. Politicians did many of the things and shared many of the things which basically were not too smart to do. We even have new professorships at the University of Munich, for example, political data science, who's especially tackling that. And is there a difference basically if you want to influence a political discussion compared to a societal discussion? So many research on that. Metrics platforms and naming and shaming, I've put a discussion. So there's the discussion if this is a solution to really like shame the people who are doing it, or if it's not smart to do it. So as said, it's discussion status, so just to give you an idea. And I think one of my last slides, oh, come on, one more. I think the battery wants to go to lunch, actually. So I think we jumped one slide, but anyway. So will artificial intelligence save us? So being German, you know that Germans love their technology and want technology to fix everything for them. So we're basically discussing in can AI help? And it's a two-sided sword, I would say, because for integrity checks, and if you think about deep fakes and the stuff I mentioned with recreating a voice within 3 seconds, so this is definitely something where we'll need AI to really find out if there was something on the file level. And there's discussion in academia, and we are also discussing internally in my party, so like 3 lines of defense. We had that earlier as well. So one line would be the easier thing, the technical check. Was that file manipulated? Is it out there in a different format? And this is something where we think that's absolutely something AI can do for us in the end, to pre-qualify. There was a fake, it's true, is there a digital water sign, whatever. Next part is content and meaning. That's a bit more difficult, but it's probably possible because researchers tell us that fake news spread differently compared to real news. So you can see it in the pattern, basically, how they spread, how they behave. And so this is something where at least AI can do a pre-filtering. So seeing the channels and basically how it made the way into society. And the last one is react on fakes, and we had a good example this morning. So unfortunately, Germany is not that fast on reacting right now. But it really is about giving the politicians, the journalists, whatever, the tools to react as fast as possible. So there need to be databases, there need to be APIs, whatever, which you can super fast grab in an automated way to be just fast and reply in 1 hour. And conclusion and self-check. So last slide, I promise. Fake news are basically not a mathematical problem, and this is why technology will probably never really solve them for us. They are philosophical problem was or societal problem, and so technology can help to improve transparency, but technology should never on its own decide what is right or wrong or what's the truth. And this is basically the danger if you think about laws who somehow outsource the decision making to tools or to companies. And the last, liberal self-check as basically a lawmaker. So I always say to the people, would you pass the same law or tool if your worst enemy would have it as well? So, and if your answer is no, then you should better not pass a law, because you basically never know who is in charge. And this is the liberal standpoint to that whole discussion, by all thinking about easy solutions to that and having tools or whatever censorship. You never know who finds their weapon. So as uncomfortable it is and as hard it is to train your people, your workforce, to retrain politicians, it's safer than ending up in censorship. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's very nice to have like at least 2 politicians from the 2 different countries on this stage, and I'm jealous to your citizens that have very quality politicians. Anyway, because we spend so much time on this stage, are there any questions from the floor? Okay. Because actually we're gonna have the afternoon session also, and we divide in 3 rooms. So you guys gonna stay with us still, right? So, yeah.
In the fight against fake news, I think media organizations and journalists can also become the subject of abuse in social media. So, and in Thailand, because of the political polarization, if you try to debunk or try to take down some fake news, then immediately you would be a subject of abuse by whoever is behind all these things. Maybe you can share some ideas to how you should be, the media organization and journalists should handle this kind of form of harassment.
I mean, this is a major issue. I mean, and it's not just related to fake news. I mean, journalists are increasingly attacked online and cyber harassment. And we had actually had a panel at the Foreign Correspondents Club annual journalism conference quite recently, which I chaired. And for example, Rana Ayub, I don't know if you know the name, she's an Indian journalist based in Mumbai, and it's terrible online abuse, threats, all sorts of, I wouldn't even list them. So, I mean, it's so bad now that, I mean, I was one of the organisers of the conference, and one of my other areas of speciality is journalist safety, and journalists face as many threats online now as they do on the ground, and it's a particular problem in the Philippines. And I was on a panel in my hometown of Glasgow 2 or 3 weeks ago and I ran into Maria Ressa, and I asked her a question, which was, do you all know who Maria Ressa is? She was one of the Time People of the Year. She was the founder of Rappler, I think that's fair to say. She was an ex-CNN journalist. And she's a favourite target of President Duterte. And I asked the question, what do you do with online threats? Do you ignore them, or do you confront them? I think the Verifiles is a different approach from Rappler, so I'll pass you the microphone maybe if I can afterwards. But she says you have to respond. She said that she was accused of being corrupt, and if she hadn't responded, it would have just stayed up there. So the Rappler approach to the online harassment is well, partly also don't look at it don't become obsessional about it and look at these attacks every 5 minutes of the day, but to respond. But Vera Files, I think you have a different approach to you.
Yes. When we began our fact-checking, we set up, measures so that we can protect ourselves. One is we do not feed the trolls. So it's kind of different from how Rappler does it. Because Rappler wants to, especially the big lies, they want to be able to debunk it, the big lies about them. In Verifiles, that's the dictum that we believe in, so you don't feed it. But recently, as Eric said, it's not just because you're fact-checking. It's really, as a journalist, our president, Ellen Tordesillas, and most of our trustees, both former and current, figured in this supposed matrix to oust the president. And then it connected Verifiles, Rappler, PCIJ, Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, and then a lawyers group as like this web that passed a certain video that claimed that the president has drug-related activities. So when that happened, we also decided to confront, because it's fake. It's an outright lie. And an accusation that as a person, you are out to destabilize your government, that's serious. That is punishable by law. So we could not let that pass. So that started in April. It's been continuing. So we've been addressing that. For our fact checks as well, we made it a policy to not have our personal bylines. Like you will not see in a story Lucille Sodipe. What you will see is Verifiles. Because one, it's a team effort, as I said. And two, there's strength in numbers so that they don't target each and every one personally. So that's it.
Okay. Are there one more questions? No, I think everyone kind of like hungry, need lunch, and I apologize that I put you to the last person on the panels. Okay, all of us gonna be in the separate rooms for this evening. So interactive is gonna encourage in the evening anyway, in the afternoon anyway. So please, everyone, thank you for our panel speakers. So you already know who did what, and then after that we can have Q&A and also interactive conversation afterwards. Thank you so much for all of you.
ขอบคุณมากค่ะอาจารย์พิจิตราสำหรับ
Thank you very much, Kun Pichitra, for your being MC for this. I will make a short announcement before lunch.
Katrin Bannach from Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom to present a token for appreciation for 5 speakers. Please, 5 speakers stand up, please, to get the token of appreciation.